So I don't know if you saw the Sacramento Kings San Antonio Spurs game last night, but if you did not, let me just tell you, Kawhi Leonard is officially the greatest player in the history of basketball. Because this guy is now impossible to stop, as well as being impossible to score on. I mean, let me say, what he did last night to Ben McLemore, he stole the ball from him like 3 times within the span of like 3 minutes. That's not okay, man. Including one time where he literally just grabbed the ball with both of his hands and just took it from McLemore, without him even dribbling. That's just not okay. But then he also couldn't be stopped offensively, as he finished with 30 points, and he also had 35 against the Golden State Warriors. So what I'm saying is Kawhi Leonard is ready to have himself an MVP season, and I think the San Antonio Spurs and Greg Popovich are giving him the reins to do that. And what I mean by that is they've kind of laid the offense back a little bit. And what I mean is the Spurs have always had a very structured offense, you know, off-ball screens, off-ball cuts, shooters running around screens, and Tony Parker using double screens to get into the paint a lot. And there is still some of that there, although Tony Parker might not be as quick as he once was, if I can be nice. But there's also more of a freelance style where Greg Popovich says, just give the ball to Kawhi and let's see what happens. Because we're seeing Kawhi going one-on-one and he's finishing. We're seeing him doing pull-up jumpers and driving to the rim and fighting through contact. I mean, against the Golden State Warriors, there was more than a few times when either Klay Thompson or Andre Iguodala would play really good defense against him and he would just finish over it anyway. And this is really a new sort of age for the Spurs, because for so long, well, for a while it was like give the ball to Tim Duncan and he's going to post up, and then the other team's going to have to bring double teams and we're going to play off of that. And then when Duncan got a little bit older and he wasn't able to dominate in the post every single night anymore, they adopted a more pass-heavy, free-flowing offense with everybody touching the ball and a lot of screens. And I mean, Boris Diaw was one of the catalysts for that because he's one of the best passing big men that we've seen in a while. And then even last season, we saw the Spurs taking a lot of mid-range jumpers through LaMarcus Aldridge and Kawhi, who can hit it, and David West was shooting them, and Tim Duncan would shoot the occasional one. And it was successful as they won like 67 games on top of being a fantastic defensive team. But now with Duncan gone and Kawhi getting just a bit better every season, it seems, I think Popovich realizes that, and Popovich has said, okay, we're going to lay back on the off-ball stuff just a little bit. We're going to give the ball to Kawhi. We're going to give him a screen, a pick and roll, usually from LaMarcus Aldridge, or we're just going to let him go one-on-one. And it is working, because Kawhi Leonard is killing it right now, and he was like the catalyst for them beating the Golden State Warriors. Well, that and Klay Thompson forgot how to shoot. But Kawhi's just going one-on-one, man. He's really just going off. And that was one thing I was interested in the offseason, was like, is Kawhi finally going to develop that FU mentality? Because he was always super efficient, and he's a fantastic defensive player, and he was one of the best players in the league, but I just wanted to see if he would develop sort of that Mamba mentality of, give me the ball, get the hell out of the way, we're going to win this game. We saw it last night against the Sacramento Kings, where it was like a 4-point game or something. It was like 30 seconds left, and Tony Parker had the ball top of the key, ready to run the San Antonio Spurs original stuff, and then Popovich just said, whoa, give the ball to Kawhi, get the hell out of the way, which Tony Parker was kind of sulking at that. He wasn't 100% happy, it seems, just from the body language. And then what did Kawhi do? He took Rudy Gay one-on-one, pulled up for a long two-pointer, knocked it right through. And of course, because he's Kawhi Leonard, he was completely unfazed. Looked like he hadn't even done anything because he has no emotions whatsoever. But hey, if he's going to be shooting like this, maybe no emotions is the way to go. So I guess this might raise a couple more questions, one of which being, Kawhi Leonard might elevate himself to being the second best player in the NBA this season. In my opinion, Steph Curry as well as Kevin Durant were still ahead of him. But if he's going to be putting up 30 points every game while doing what he does on defense, then he's the second best player in the league behind LeBron James, and he's probably going to win MVP. And so now I got to ask myself, would they really have a chance against the Warriors? Well, I have to imagine that Golden State is not going to give up 120 points a game every time, or whatever they gave up to the Spurs. a team of Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant, Draymond Green, Andre Iguodala coming off the bench, Sean Livingston, who's still not a bad defensive point guard, and Steph Curry, who's not bad either. I got to imagine that team is not going to be bad defensively for an entire season. But at the same time, on top of Kawhi just being a beast, LaMarcus Aldridge is kind of like the perfect anti-Warriors big man, in the sense of he can actually post up on Draymond Green because he can shoot over him. A lot of big men, even though they're bigger than Draymond, can't really post him up because, one, Draymond's very strong, and two, he's just a naturally gifted defensive player. But if you can shoot over him, then you got it. But also, Aldridge has stretched his range out to the three-point line. We saw against the Warriors, there was a time when Draymond wanted to provide help, and that split second of him stepping off resulted in a LaMarcus Aldridge corner three. So if Aldridge is a guy who is going to force Draymond to not be super active defensively because he can't leave Aldridge, it's going to force the Warriors to put somebody else on him. Or it's going to force Draymond to be a bit more disciplined and not be able to just run around defensively, which definitely hurts them on that side of the floor. And then you add that to, again, Kawhi being an absolute monster. Hey, they might have a chance, who knows? But another question that gets raised for me is if Kawhi Leonard really is going to become this team's primary ball handler, and he's going to be the guy where the offense is really running through like that, now you got to think about the guys that you play around him. You got to imagine Danny Green would be perfect because he's an outside shooter who didn't actually have the best shooting season last year, but hopefully he can bounce back well. He's still injured for a little while. I think Ginobili could probably fit in well. But Tony Parker's interesting because Tony is normally the guy who has the ball in his hands a lot for the Spurs, running the offense, being sort of the first guy to dictate the offense for them, even if he's not often the guy scoring or getting the assist. But he's not a great outside shooter. And if Kawhi is going to be the driving force of the offense, you might be better off putting Patty Mills in the game than Tony Parker, you know? But then again, on the flip side, it is the San Antonio Spurs, who also have a really dynamic offense, and I'm sure Popovich could figure out a way to have Tony with the ball in his hands and then Kawhi perhaps getting off of a screen and getting a bit of a head start towards the basket. I think that could work. But at the same time, we saw last night against the Kings, again, Pop literally said, Tony, give the ball to Kawhi and get out of the way. And if it's that sort of a situation, it'd probably be better to not have Tony in the game because he's not a great outside shooter. I mean, if you could roll with a lineup around Kawhi of maybe Danny Green, Jonathan Simmons, LaMarcus Aldridge, and probably Manu Ginobili, because that way you got Kawhi and Ginobili who can put the ball on the floor, but they both can also shoot from outside. And then you got Danny Green as well as Jonathan Simmons who can both hit from outside as well. And then you still got LaMarcus Aldridge down low. And while I'm not a huge fan of Pau Gasol overall because of his defense, I think Kawhi with Gasol and Aldridge could be interesting just because it's two guys who can finish down low. But I think we could really see the offense for the Spurs develop into being played through Kawhi Leonard because in the first two games, again, he was going one-on-one, he was in pick and rolls, and it worked really damn well because they won their first two games. And, they blew out the Warriors, but they also had a really close one against Sacramento, and that's a tough game to win because, one, for what it's worth, the Kings have improved their roster. They're a much deeper team now. They actually have a roster full of NBA players. But also, you just went from Golden State to going to Sacktown to play the very same day against a team that's in its home opener. That's a tough game to win. And, it was definitely close, but Kawhi Leonard was the difference maker. So Kawhi's a beast. He's developed that FU mentality that I really wanted him to develop. Hopefully he carries it through the whole season, which I'm sure he will. He's shown an ability to finish through contact, beat really good defenders one-on-one, especially against the Warriors with Klay Thompson and Iguodala. Popovich has embraced him too. He's telling guys, get out of the way, give it to Kawhi. And now I think the next question is, what sort of lineups are we going to see from the Spurs this season? Are we going to see shooters around Kawhi? Are we going to see moments where Kawhi is pretty much your primary ball handler? That's the way I would go. Seriously, I would surround him with shooters. Once Danny Green comes back, that'll be awesome. If the Spurs have a trade to make, I think it could be to acquire a stretch four. That's just one thing I'm going to say. Get yourself another shooter in there, perhaps someone who's kind of like an athlete for you. And that's it. I think the Spurs are they're turning over a new leaf. I think it's the right time to do it. And it should be fun. And I think Kawhi is really up for the MVP this season.